The Gate of Serpents. Beneath the veil of the Cambodian dawn, where mist curls like pale incense over the sleeping earth, there stands a gate. It does not rise proudly, nor does it shine. It lingers, as though half buried in its own forgetting. Carved of ancient stone, its surface has softened beneath centuries of monsoon and silence. Roots have wound their way into its cracks, binding it, holding it, as if the forest itself refuses to let it go. The stones gleam faintly with the damp breath of morning, and though broken, though weathered, the gate still carries a weight that presses upon the soul. Whispers tell us that no gate in such a place was simply an entrance. It was a ritual, a threshold not only between spaces of earth, but between the seen and the unseen. The serpents carved upon its frame coil in endless spirals, their scales blurred by rain, yet their forms remain alive, writhing as if they slumber and wait. Gods gaze from its surface with faces half lost to moss, their eyes eroded yet still staring with a quiet intensity. Around them, twist figures of sacred beasts, lions, elephants, winged creatures, protectors of thresholds, guardians of silence. It is said that when the light of dawn first touched this stone, the entire gate shimmered with meaning. The carvings were not merely decoration, they were scripture, written not in words, but in form. Battles of the heavens etched into stone, rulers forgotten, their crowns now dust, still carved in triumph. Celestial maps, guiding eyes toward constellations now swallowed by the clouds. And so the gate waited not as a ruin, not as an end, but as a beginning. In forgotten times, torches once burned in circles here. Pilgrims moved in silence, carrying offerings of flowers and rice. They approached not as one approaches a wall, but as one approaches a spirit. For the gate was never only stone, it was said to be a mouth through which prayers passed, a channel to realms invisible. Whispers tell us of a ritual performed beneath its arch. At the first breath of dawn, supplicants would stand before the serpents and press their palms together. They would lower their gaze, then lift it slowly toward the sky, offering not their words but their silence, for it was believed that silence itself was heard more clearly in the heavens than any cry. Perhaps they believed the gate was listening. Perhaps it still is. Some believe that the serpents carved upon its frame are not earthly at all but cosmic, that their spirals are echoes of galaxies, their twisting bodies a reflection of the endless path of stars. Each scale marked not to frighten, but to remind that existence is vast, and that to pass through such a gate is to step into that vastness, humbled. Others say the gods etched into its stone were not guardians of one temple, but guardians of time. That they did not protect walls or shrines, but moments, those fleeting instants when the veil between worlds grew thin, when one could breathe and almost touch eternity. And so the gate stands, wrapped in vines and birdsong, yet carrying an unseen weight. The forest hums around it, cicadas rising and falling like a chant, as though they too remember. Beneath the silence, beneath the moss, there lingers a presence, a pulse. It is said that if one lingers at its base, with the patience of still water, the carvings begin to move within the mind's eye. The serpents shimmer as though alive. The gods exhale, the animals shift upon their feet, restless, watching. And then, for a moment, the silence thickens, as though the air itself holds its breath. What secrets does it hold? Perhaps the gate is more than a threshold. Perhaps it is a keeper not only of stone, but of memory. Every pilgrim who passed beneath it, every whisper of prayer, every vow of silence, all absorbed, all sealed, all held, not gone, not forgotten, simply resting like a river beneath its frozen surface, waiting for the thaw. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. Now, at twilight, the gate wears a different face. The sun sinks low, painting the serpents in shadows of gold and violet. Birds drift back to their hidden nests. The roots clutch tighter as darkness rises, as if the earth itself wishes to keep this threshold bound in secrecy. And yet, standing before it, one feels that to step through its arch would not be to walk into ruins. It would not be to find broken walls, scattered stones, or the silence of decay. No, it would be to walk into another realm, one unmeasured by hours or centuries. A realm where time waits, folded gently like parchment. Where voices of forgotten rulers still whisper in the air, where celestial maps still turn above unseen, where the vow of silence still lingers, unbroken. The gate waits, not for worshippers, not for kings. It waits for the one who will listen. And so it remains, beneath the veil of dawn and the silence of twilight, carved with serpents, softened by rain, swallowed by roots, yet heavy with presence. Perhaps it was never meant to be crossed. Perhaps it was only meant to remind. For some gates are not doors, some gates are mirrors, and when you stand before them, you do not step forward, you step inward. The Chamber of Faces. In the heart of Angkor, where forests breathe heavily upon crumbling stone, there rises a place where towers loom like sleeping giants. Their spires pierce the mist, their roots sink deep into centuries, and within their labyrinth of shadows lies a chamber unlike any other. Here, every surface bears a face, serene, watchful, eternal. It is said that to step inside is to step into an ocean of gazes, dozens, hundreds carved into walls, into pillars, into the very breath of stone itself. By torchlight, their features flicker, shifting with each tremor of flame. They are never quite the same. One mouth curves with faint compassion, another seems almost stern. Some eyes tilt upward, marked by calm, detachment, while others fall heavy, like guardians burdened by memory. And yet, together, they form a silence that is not empty, but full, a silence that listens. Whispers tell us these faces are not simply likenesses. They are truths carved in variations, each a different syllable of the same sacred word. Who, then, do they belong to? Were they gods? Were they kings? Were they ancestors whose spirits still linger? No answer has ever rested long in the hand of certainty. Some say they are the face of Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattva of compassion, multiplied endlessly to remind all who enter that mercy is infinite, that divinity has many expressions but one heart. Others believe they are the image of Jayavarman, the god-king of Angkor, his likeness repeated across towers and chambers to mark his dominion not only over land but over spirit. And still others whisper that the faces are older than both king and god, that they are ancestors, nameless yet eternal, guardians of memory itself. Their presence carved to remind the living that every step is watched, every breath is part of a lineage that does not die. Each explanation dissolves into the other, like incense smoke fading into the air. None can be held, none can be proven, and so only reverence remains. It is said that in forgotten centuries, the chamber would awaken at dawn. Torches lit by monks flickered across the faces, their light making them seem alive. The scent of incense curled upward, winding through stone lips, as if offered directly into their breath. Chants echoed here, slow, deep, oceanic chants that vibrated against stone walls until the chamber itself seemed to hum. Those who entered knelt upon the cool floor, their eyes lifted not to the sky but to the faces around them, as though the sky itself had been lowered into the temple. Imagine it now, the room dimly lit, the air heavy with fragrance, the slow rhythm of voices rising and falling, every surface watching, every surface listening. The faces did not move, yet they seemed to shift with the chant. Smiles softened, brows deepened, eyes grew more awake, until it was no longer clear whether they were carved at all, or whether they had always been alive, and stone was merely their chosen disguise. Some pilgrims spoke of visions. They said that in the stillness of meditation, when their breath slowed and their minds emptied, the faces dissolved into one another. Hundreds became one. Many became a single vast presence, luminous and veiled, like the moon behind a shroud of cloud. Others said the faces whispered in silence, not words, but impressions, a memory, a feeling, a truth too large for language. They returned to their lives altered, marked not by revelation but by a quiet certainty that they had been seen, and perhaps that was the purpose. Not that the faithful should look upon the faces, but that the faces should look upon them. Time, as always, moved onward. Kings rose and fell, dynasties crumbled. Stone was claimed by the slow patience of trees, yet the chamber remained. Now, when travelers enter, they find moss clinging to lips once smooth. They find vines curling across foreheads and brows. Some faces are fractured, broken by centuries of rain. Yet even in ruin, they endure, still serene, still watchful. Even now, when one stands in the hush of the chamber, a strange awareness settles in the heart. It feels less like one is visiting a ruin, and more like one is being received into a council. The air grows thicker, as though layered with unseen breaths. The silence deepens, not empty but waiting, and the faces gaze on, calm as eternity. What do they remember? Perhaps they recall the sound of drums echoing through the city at dawn. Perhaps they recall the footsteps of kings, heavy with power, passing beneath their watch. Perhaps they remember the monks who sang, the villagers who prayed, the countless hearts who once sought comfort beneath their gaze. Or perhaps their memory is older still. Perhaps they hold not the memory of Angkor, but the memory of time itself, the endless spiral of empires rising, falling, returning to dust, faces carved in stone, bearing witness to the dance of impermanence. And so the listener drifts deeper, deeper into that chamber. Imagine lying upon the cool floor, eyes closed, while the faces hover unseen above. The air feels thick, but not heavy. The silence is vast, but not empty. It is almost as if the faces are breathing, not loudly, not visibly, but softly, endlessly, like the tide of an unseen ocean. If one lingers long enough, the distinction between self and stone begins to blur. You are not simply standing among them, you are part of them. Another face added, another presence folded into the chamber's endless watch. And perhaps that is the quiet truth carved into every surface, that we too are witnesses, that we too are remembered. Now, as twilight settles over Angkor, the chamber grows darker. The last rays of sun strike one final cheek, one final lip, then vanish into shadow. The jungle swells with sound, cicadas, birds, the low rustle of leaves, and still the faces remain, untouched, unchanging. One cannot help but wonder, are they still watching us? Or are we the ones being remembered by them? Perhaps both, perhaps neither. For some truths do not resolve. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. So let the image remain. A chamber of stone, faces upon every wall, serene, watchful, eternal. Not gods, not kings, not ancestors alone, but something larger, something nameless, something that refuses to vanish. And as sleep approaches, let the listener drift into that silence, a silence filled not with absence, but with presence. The faces hover still, carved into eternity, gazing upon us with the patience of centuries. Perhaps it was never meant to be known, perhaps it was only meant to be felt. The temple of roots and stone, in forgotten jungles, where the air hangs thick with the breath of centuries, there stands a temple where stone and tree have become one. Its walls, once squared by human hands, are now veiled in roots, twisted and coiling, like serpents turned to wood. Towers rise only to be pierced by branches, and archways, once proud and clear, now bow beneath the weight of living trunks. It is said that to approach this place is to enter a dream where time has folded in upon itself, a vision where what was built by man and what was born of earth no longer stand apart. The opening image lingers on a single doorway. Through it once walked kings, priests and pilgrims, their steps echoing upon stone. Now, a vast root has descended from the canopy above, splitting the entrance in two. It does not merely cover the passage, it stands like a guardian, a barrier, and a sentinel. The visitor pauses, uncertain if crossing beneath it is an act of intrusion or of reverence. Whispers tell us this union of tree and ruin is no accident. They say the spirits of the forest, ancient and unseen, reached down with patient fingers of root and vine. They entwined themselves around the sacred places of man, not to erase them, but to claim them, to remind the living that the forest and the temple were never separate, that the divine may dwell as much in bark as in stone, as much in leaf as in tower. Some believe the roots are guardians, that they twine themselves across walls and doorways to keep the temple awake, to prevent it from being forgotten by the world. Others say the roots are bridges, that through them the temple still breathes its memory carried upward into the canopy, whispered into the night sky by the rustle of leaves. Step deeper, and the temple reveals itself not in grandeur, but in quiet endurance. Moss carpets the stones, soft and damp, catching the light of the moon like scattered emeralds. The carvings of gods, half buried in bark, peer out with softened faces, their features blurred but not erased. Some doorways gape open, but no longer lead to rooms. Instead, they lead into the trunks of trees that have grown to fill the hollow spaces. The air smells of damp earth and old incense, as though offerings left 1,000 years ago have never fully faded. Here, silence is not emptiness, it is presence. It hums with life unseen, with creatures that move only at night, with roots that seem to breathe, with leaves that tremble though no wind passes. It is said that in ages past, the temple was a house of devotion. Priests lit torches in its corridors, chants echoed through its halls, and kings left offerings at its altars. The temple was built to last forever, stone stacked upon stone with precision, as though permanence could be summoned by hand, and yet permanence was never stone alone. When the worshippers faded, when the kings fell silent, when footsteps no longer pressed upon its floors, the temple was not abandoned. The forest moved in. Roots sank into the cracks of stone. Branches reached through windows once lit by lamps. The living and the built became entwined. The temple endured, but not in the way its makers intended. It endured as a fusion, a testament that no boundary truly exists between what is built and what is grown. Imagine, now, moonlight upon its walls. The silver glow falls across twisted roots, each vein glistening as though lit from within. Shadows lengthen and move across bark and lintel, across stone worn smooth by centuries. From a distance, the temple seems almost to breathe. If you listen closely, it is as though the roots are whispering, not in words, but in the slow language of growth. A language that does not measure time in days or years, but in the patient rhythm of centuries. And so, the roots are not only growing, they are remembering. Every tendril that coils through a doorway carries with it the memory of prayers once spoken. Every trunk that leans upon a tower bears the weight of vows once whispered. The forest does not erase, it listens. Pilgrims who arrive in silence say that at night, when the stars emerge, the temple transforms. The carvings, softened by moss, seem to stir beneath the starlight. The faces of gods, though broken, seem to breathe again. Some say the roots shift in the dark, slowly, imperceptibly, as though adjusting themselves to cradle the stones more gently. One story tells of a traveler who dreamed within the temple. She lay upon the floor, the roots beneath her like a woven mat, and dreamt that the trees spoke, not in voice, but in image. She saw processions of ancient kings. She heard the echo of drums. She smelled the incense of forgotten rituals. When she awoke, the roots pressed against her back seemed warm, as though they had carried the memory of her dream into themselves. Another tale speaks of a monk who prayed beneath the doorway root. For hours he sat, unmoving, as the moon traveled overhead. When dawn broke, he rose and whispered only one phrase, "The temple listens." And then he walked away, never to return. What is this temple then? Is it a ruin? Is it a forest? Or is it something larger, something that does not fit within our narrow lines of naming? Perhaps it is both ruin and forest, neither abandoned nor alive in the way we expect. Perhaps it is proof that what we build does not vanish, but changes shape. Stone is permanence, root is memory. Together, they are endurance. As night deepens, the jungle grows louder. The calls of unseen creatures rise into the air, mingling with the low hum of insects. And yet, within the temple, the sound feels hushed, as if muffled by the weight of roots. One stands within the doorway, before the vast barrier root, and feels the presence of something that cannot be named. It is not a ruin, it is not a forest, it is something between, something sacred. Perhaps it is the union itself that is holy, the stone remembering the hands that carved it, the root remembering, the earth that bore it. Two halves of a vow, joined together in silence, and so the closing image lingers. The doorway, split by the vast root, moonlight glimmering across moss. The air heavy with silence. The root does not merely grow, it listens, it carries secrets upward into the sky. Perhaps the prayers once spoken in the temple have not vanished at all. Perhaps they rise even now, traveling through the veins of roots, carried into the branches above, released into the night with every trembling leaf. And perhaps, if one listens closely, one can still hear them. Whispers not of loss, but of endurance, whispers that remind us nothing sacred is ever truly abandoned. Chapter: The mirror of still waters. It begins with silence, a silence so deep it seems carved out of time itself, resting in the hollow of a forgotten valley. Beyond the scattered bones of ruins, where stone walls lie crumbled and grass whispers through broken courtyards, there is a reservoir, vast, still, and black as polished obsidian. Its surface is unbroken. Not a ripple moves across it, not even the tremor of a breeze. And yet, though motionless, it is alive with reflections. Above it hangs a canopy of stars, scattered like fragments of silver, and the water receives them with a calm so absolute it seems the heavens themselves are drinking from the earth. It is said the people who built this place did not build it for water. No river feeds it, no spring gives it life. It was shaped as a mirror, a sacred vessel for reflection. Not reflection of face alone, but of spirit. Here, the sky bowed low enough to kiss the ground, and the earth lifted itself toward the stars. A place where two worlds touched. Whispers tell us that when the nights were clear and the moon traced her silver path across the dark, the reservoir ceased to be water at all. It became a threshold. Those who looked upon it claimed to see more than the constellations above. They saw echoes, shadows of events, yet to pass, memories buried deep within the self, and sometimes the faint outlines of figures long gone, hovering just beyond the veil. The ritual of gazing. It is said kings once came here before battle. They would kneel at the edge of the waters, armor set aside, their faces washed in starlight. In the mirror of stillness, they sought guidance, not from advisors or generals, but from the union of heaven and earth itself. Some returned with resolve etched into their gaze. Others, it is whispered, left trembling, for what they saw in those depths was not victory, but silence, a silence that stretched into eternity. There were also the rituals of the people, softer, quieter than the king's solemn vigils. At certain seasons, the villagers carried offerings to the edge of the reservoir, baskets of flowers, woven reeds, and clay vessels filled with oil. They would set small flames alight, the offerings drifting across the surface like lanterns, each flame a prayer, each drifting spark a voice rising into the night. Some believed the lake itself spoke to the gods, that when a flame flickered and vanished upon the still waters, it was not extinguished, it was received, drawn downward into unseen depths where divinity listened, perhaps even answered, not in words, but in signs. A shifting reflection, a tremor of starlight, the breath of a forgotten wind. The mirror as threshold. Those who lingered long enough claimed the water shimmered with visions not wholly of this world. A traveler once wrote that he saw the stars bend inward, as though the heavens leaned down to study themselves. Another told of hearing faint voices, not carried by air, but by reflection, murmurs rippling just beneath the skin of the lake, as though memory itself had found a home in the silence. It is said children were warned not to stare too long into the waters, not because of danger in the ordinary sense, but because of something subtler, a belief that the lake remembered, that it could hold the gaze of those who looked into it, keeping fragments of them within its mirror. "Do not give too much of yourself to what does not answer," the elders whispered. And yet, people returned, always returned, for there was a magnetism in that silence, a promise that beyond the shimmer, something greater waited to be seen. The endurance of stillness. Now the rituals are gone. The kings have fallen silent. The villagers no longer bring offerings. Time has folded those lives into dust, scattering them across centuries. And yet, the lake endures. Its surface remains unbroken, reflecting the stars as faithfully as it did in ages past. Roots curl near its banks, moss creeps down stone steps that once carried processions, and owls nest in the hollows of ruined towers. The place has been swallowed by silence, and still the reservoir holds. Still, it waits. Some nights, the stars crowd more thickly above its black expanse, as though drawn to it, longing for their own reflection. The moon drifts across its surface, pale and serene, gazing upon her own ghost in the water. And sometimes, if you stand there long enough, you may feel a strange certainty that the lake is not merely still but listening. The veil of memory. There is a belief, half forgotten, that waters such as these do not merely reflect the heavens. They store them. Every night, the stars are gathered, folded into its depths, kept in the memory of liquid silence. Each reflection is a layering of time, yesterday's constellations lying beneath today's, tomorrow's faintly pressing upward. A spiral of sky contained within a single mirror. Beneath the silence, whispers say, lies an entire map of memory. Not only of the stars, but of those who came before. The priests who burned incense at its edge, the mothers who cast flowers into its depths, the children who dared glance too long into its gaze. Each life is said to be drawn down into the stillness, suspended like lanterns in an eternal night. It may be that what we call silence is not silence at all. Perhaps it is simply the sound of listening too deep for our ears to follow. The fade into silence, and so the reservoir remains dark, vast, and waiting. The ruins around it crumble, grass rises and falls with the wind, but the mirror does not change. It watches, and it keeps. Some believe it is not finished, that one day a voice will return to it, a voice able to awaken the visions once sought in its waters, a gaze strong enough to pierce its depths without fear. Others believe no such day will come, that its purpose was never to be fulfilled, only to remind us of the threshold between earth and sky, body and spirit, silence and sound. Perhaps it was never meant to be found. Perhaps it was always meant to remain exactly as it is, a reflection that belongs to no one, yet to everyone who dares to look. And if you were to stand there, at the edge of its black expanse, beneath the scatter of stars, you might feel the hush gather around you. You might see your own shadow fall into the depths, merging with reflections too ancient to name, and you might understand, if only for a moment, that the lake does not merely mirror the stars. It mirrors the soul. It listens where memory fades, and even now, long after the voices are gone, it waits beneath the stars, a threshold of silence, whispering of things unseen. A mirror, still waiting for someone to look again. Chapter: The Corridor of Silent Flames. There is a place where the air itself feels hushed, as though it remembers what it once carried and dares not break the spell. A place where stone breathes with a patience older than any life that passes through it. Here, within the husk of a ruined monastery, corridors stretch onward into shadow. Their ceilings bow low, the carvings along their walls worn soft by centuries, and the silence that lingers there feels less like absence, more like a presence, as if silence itself has taken residence in the stone. It is said these passages were never meant for daylight. They were shaped for hours, when the world outside fell into darkness, when moonlight kissed the ridges of roofs, and the breath of the earth slowed. In such hours, the corridors came alive. One can almost see it still, in the mind's eye, a line of candles burning one after another, stretching into the distance like a river of flame, each wick catching from the one before it, until the walls glowed with trembling amber light. Imagine it, shadows bending, flame dancing, voices hushed. A procession moving softly forward, robes brushing against stone, footsteps echoing in rhythm. The corridor did not merely contain the procession, it carried it, as though the passage itself were a vessel guiding those within it towards something beyond. The corridor as vessel whispers tell us these halls were not built for human grandeur. They were not meant to impress or overwhelm, not meant for sermons shouted to crowds or banners hung in pride. They were built for the in-between moments, for silence, for devotion too fragile for sunlight, for rituals that required secrecy, not out of fear, but reverence. Those who entered did so with their heads bowed, not to the stone, but to the weight of the hours. Midnight. The turning of time when dreams brush against waking, when the stars seem closer, and breath itself feels like prayer. In such hours, the monks carried lanterns or candles, their light fragile, wavering, alive. Each flame was less an illumination than a vow, a whisper made visible. Some believe the monks spoke no words at all as they walked these corridors. Their chant, if there was one, was silence itself. The hush of feet pressing against stone, the rhythm of breath echoing faintly, was enough. In silence, every sound becomes holy. The flicker of flame, the faint crack of wax, the whisper of fabric moving in darkness. And so the corridor, long and unbroken, became a living scripture. Each step, another line written in its memory. Each candle, another prayer folded into its walls. The carved lotus. Even now, when you walk along what remains of these passages, Your eyes are drawn to the faint carvings pressed into stone. Lotuses, spiraled and simple, their outlines faded with age. They are not uniform. Some bloom wide, some remain tightly closed, each one etched by a hand long gone, each one carrying the same symbol, the possibility of awakening. The lotus, it is said, blooms not in pure air, but in mud. It rises from what is murky, what is buried, what is veiled. To carve the lotus here was to remind each passerby, the vow is not to escape the earth, but to bloom within it. Beneath each carved petal lay a whispered promise, a breath pressed into silence. Promises to remain steady, promises to carry light in dark places, promises to remember. But time is long, and vows are fragile. Some petals stand crisp and proud even now, while others have faded to little more than shadows. Just as devotion endures for some, and falters for others, the stone remembers, even when voices forget. Echoes of flame. It is not difficult, standing there in the hush, to imagine the corridor alive again, to see the flickering ribbon of fire stretching down its length, each candle leaning toward the next as though whispering its secret. The glow brushing across carvings, catching faint shadows, turning silence into something shimmering and alive. Close your eyes and listen there. In the hollow of imagination, you may hear it, the murmur of steps, the faintest undertone of chant slipping into the stone. Not loud, not insistent, but soft, as though the corridor itself sings in a voice too low for daylight. For centuries, flame after flame was carried through these passages. Some burned bright and long, others flickered and vanished quickly. Yet together they formed an endless procession. Even now, long after the last procession has ended, there is a strange sense that the flames still move there, invisible, unceasing. A procession that continues, not in body, but in memory. The corridor as dream. It is said that those who lingered too long in these hallways sometimes felt themselves carried forward by the corridor itself, as if the very stones leaned toward an unseen destination. Steps became lighter, breath became slower, and the further one walked, the more time itself seemed to loosen. Hours fell away, days seemed to collapse into a single unbroken moment. Perhaps this was the true ritual, not merely the procession of monks, but the passage into timelessness. A place where memory and forgetting wove together, where silence became a bridge to what cannot be spoken. For what is a corridor if not a passage? And what is a passage if not a threshold? Perhaps to walk those candlelit halls was to walk between worlds, between waking and dream, between earth and the divine, between silence and the echo of what lies beyond silence. The endless passage. Now the monastery lies in ruin. Its roof is broken, its towers crumbled, its stones heavy with moss and dust. Yet the corridor still stretches on. Its length is unbroken, its shadow still deep. The carvings remain, faint but present, like echoes lingering long after the voice has gone. If you stand at its entrance and let your gaze follow the shadows, you may feel the pull, the sense that it does not end where your eyes lose it, that the darkness extends further, folding into itself, spiraling into places unseen. Some have said the corridor is endless, that even if you were to walk forever, the flame at its end would always be just out of reach. Perhaps this is its purpose, not to lead anywhere, but to carry you inward, to remind you that the truest procession is not made by monks in robes or voices in chant, but by the steps of your own breath, your own silence, your own wandering spirit. The fade into silence. And so it remains. The ruined monastery sleeps, yet the corridor continues. It stretches into shadow, lined with carvings of lotuses that glimmer faintly in memory. It holds the footsteps of those who once passed, the hush of voices that once fell into silence, the light of flames that once trembled along its length. Perhaps the flames are still there, not seen, not touched, but burning in a place beyond sight. Perhaps each vow whispered remains, folded into the stone like seeds beneath the soil, waiting, listening. The corridor asks no questions. It gives no answers. It only stretches forward, endless, unbroken, a passage of both memory and forgetting. And somewhere in that silence, the flame of devotion still flickers, unseen, unending, carried onward by shadows, guiding not the monks who once walked here, but the hearts who remember. Perhaps it was never meant to be found. Perhaps it was only meant to be walked in silence forever. Chapter: The Tower That Breathed with the Sky. There is a place, deep within the jungle's embrace, where vines coil like veins around forgotten stone, and the night air hums with a presence that is neither earth nor sky, but something in between. Among these ruins rises a single tower. Its spire leans ever so slightly toward the heavens, as though yearning, as though listening, as though the stone itself were drawn upward in devotion. When night descends and the moon steps into her throne, the tower glimmers, its edges catch the silver light, and shadows pool at its base like still water. Beneath its silhouette, one feels not merely the weight of ruins, but the breath of something unseen, ancient, patient, eternal. It is said the tower was no ordinary structure. Whispers tell us it was built as both calendar and prayer, a spine of stone aligned with the movements of stars, a bridge between earth and sky. To stand beneath it was not to look at architecture, but to enter into a ritual of time itself. The tower as prayer. In forgotten nights long ago, when drums echoed through the trees and incense coiled into the darkness, the people gathered at the tower's base. They did not call it a monument. They did not call it a fortress. They called it a breath made stone, a prayer stretched upward. Every notch, every carving, every tilt of its body was deliberate, aligned with cycles of the moon, the solstice of the sun, the breath of seasons. The tower was a calendar, yes, but not in the way of numbers and days. It marked not merely time, but rhythm. The rhythm of rivers swelling, of seeds stirring beneath soil, of stars shifting their patterns. It was a map of breath, a measure of the sky's heartbeat. Those who built it knew that time was not a straight line, but a spiral. They etched spirals into the stone, curling endlessly inward, endlessly outward, reminding all who looked that to move forward was also to return. And so, the tower became a prayer, not of words, but of alignment. Each stone laid upon the next was an offering, each angle was a vow. The tower itself leaned upward as though it longed to inhale the sky, to exhale back into it. The carvings of breath and cosmos. Step closer, and you will see the carvings. Dragons coiled in endless motion, their bodies twisting like smoke, their scales catching torchlight in imagined shimmer. Some believe the dragons were guardians, but others say they were rivers of time, flowing upward, carrying prayers from earth to heaven. Next to them, dancers unfold in delicate forms, arms extended, bodies curved in motion yet frozen forever in stone. These dancers were said to embody the cycles of the moon, each gesture an echo of waxing and waning, of appearing and vanishing. Their bodies became symbols of rhythm itself, caught between stillness and movement, and there are spirals, endless spirals, etched deep into the stone. Some broad, some narrow, some so faint they can only be traced with the tips of fingers, spirals that call to mind galaxies, or perhaps the shells of ocean creatures, or perhaps the very breath that expands and contracts within us all. It is said these spirals were not mere decoration, but inscriptions of the eternal, a reminder that what begins will end, and what ends will begin again. The tower did not speak in words but in symbols. Each carving was a syllable, each image a prayer. Together they formed a language of breath, a language of cosmos, a language that could be read only when the heart slowed and the silence deepened. The atmosphere of suspension. To stand within the tower's shadow is to feel suspended, as though air itself is caught between inhalation and exhalation, waiting. The jungle quiets, the insects pause, even the leaves seem to hush. It is not silence of absence, but silence of reverence. Some who linger there say they feel the tower breathing, not in the crude rhythm of lungs, but in a larger, more celestial way. As the moon drifts overhead, the tower seems to lean into it, as though reaching, as though listening to a voice beyond our hearing. When clouds pass, shadows sweep across its face like moving veils, and for a moment it feels alive, shimmering, trembling at the edge of motion. In forgotten ages, the tower was said to be the meeting place of earth and sky, not simply where stone touched air, but where the seen and unseen overlapped. Rituals held here were not meant to summon or command, but to listen, to lean into the heartbeat of the universe. And in this listening, the people found rhythm. They measured their crops, their journeys, their ceremonies by the tower's alignment with stars. They believed that to follow its measure was to follow the path of the cosmos itself. To live outside that rhythm was to be lost. Moonlit reflection. Now, the jungle holds the tower in its green embrace. Roots creep up its sides, moss carpets its stones, and silence hangs in its broken time chambers. Yet still, on nights when the moon rises bright and full, the tower glimmers. Its edges shine silver, its carvings catch the glow, its shadow stretches long and patient across the earth. Look upward, and you will see how it leans ever so slightly, as if yearning toward the sky. And in that tilt, in that gentle inclination, lies its truth, stone longing for starlight, earth longing for heaven. Perhaps the tower is not abandoned, perhaps it still listens. Perhaps it still breathes in rhythm with the moon. Its spirals still turn, its dragons still coil, its dancers still move, though not to human eyes. For in the space between silence and sound, between stone and starlight, the tower continues. The fade into silence. And so, as night deepens and the stars scatter like embers across the sky, the tower remains, a spine of stone against the heavens, a prayer cast upward, a breath carved into earth. Its carvings whisper of cycles that do not end, of spirals that carry us both outward and inward, of rhythms older than memory. Stand beneath it, and you may feel the hum faint, unseen, yet undeniable. A reminder that we too are bound to cycles, that our breath is not separate from the sky's breath, that our time is not separate from the spirals etched into stone. As the moon drifts overhead, brushing the tower in silver glow, the line between earth and heaven softens. Stone and starlight blur together, bound in an eternal embrace. And you are left with the quiet sense that the tower is not merely reaching toward the sky, but that the sky, too, bends gently toward the tower. Perhaps it was never meant to be explained. Perhaps it was only meant to be felt as silence, a rhythm, a breath shared between earth and stars. The temple that vanishes at dawn. It is said that there are ruins which belong not to the earth, but to the hour between darkness and day. Not carved into maps, nor named in chronicles, they exist in silence, appearing only when the stars are fading and vanishing once the sun spills its first golden light. Whispers tell us of one such temple, a sanctuary woven not from stone alone, but from the breath of night itself. Some call it a mirage. Others believe it is a dream carried into the waking world. And yet, there are those who swear they have stood upon its steps, touched its walls, and heard its hidden echoes in the mist. The invitation: imagine, for a moment, that you are walking just before dawn. The sky is a pale blue veil, the jungle around you still heavy with the perfume of rain. Mist curls upward from the earth, wrapping the trees, blurring their shapes into ghostly silhouettes. And then, as if drawn by a hidden hand, faint lines appear in the fog, the sharp suggestion of stairs, the shadow of a pillar, the curve of a wall. At first, you doubt your eyes, but step by step, the vision sharpens. What seemed only mist becomes a form, what seemed emptiness takes on weight. Before you rises a temple, not radiant, not lit by fire, but hushed, fragile, its edges wavering like a reflection in water. Its steps are damp with dew, its walls breathe with silence. The air itself seems to bow around it, holding it in a reverent hush. It is not a place that welcomes daylight. It is a place that belongs to the hour when even birds hesitate to sing, when the world still sleeps in a half-dream. The deepening mystery. The elders of nearby villages speak of monks who once guarded this temple, but theirs was no ordinary vow. They swore to appear only at night, to keep watch until the eastern sky brightened, and then to vanish with their sanctuary into shadow once more. It is said their chants were not meant for human ears, but for the stars themselves. Their words moved upward, rising like smoke, joining the constellations that traced slow spirals overhead. Pilgrims, hearing rumors of the place, sought to find it. They set out under moonlight, guided by whispers, by half-remembered maps, by instinct more than direction. Some returned with wild eyes, speaking of steps that led into nothingness, of halls that faded as they walked. Others swore they had entered, that they had stood inside a vast chamber lit not by flame, but by a glow like moonlight pressing through thin cloth. They spoke of carvings along the walls, spirals, stars, and endless lines of script too delicate to touch, but when pressed for proof, they carried none. Not a fragment of stone, not a drawing, not a mark, only a story fragile, intangible, impossible to prove. And so, the temple became less a place, and more a rumor of a place. A dream whispered between travelers, a vision too soft to be captured, symbols in the mist. Those who claim to have seen the temple describe its carvings most vividly. Spirals that echo the curl of seashells and galaxies, lotus flowers opening upward, each petal marked by the suggestion of flame, stars etched in long lines across the lintels, forming constellations not of the earth, but of forgotten skies. It is said the walls themselves shifted with breath, that the temple inhaled and exhaled, a living body woven from stone and mist. To stand inside it was to feel oneself floating, as though the earth itself had grown weightless, as though time no longer pressed forward but circled back upon itself, endlessly, gently. Whispers tell us this was no mere building, but a threshold, a place where waking and dreaming touched, a passage where memory and forgetting intertwined. Between certainty and uncertainty, those who seek the temple never travel in groups. The stories warn against it. The vision, they say, reveals itself only to the solitary, to the wanderer who walks in silence, whose footsteps fall like offerings upon the damp earth. Some scholars dismiss the tales. They speak of mirages born from exhaustion, of ruins buried deep in the jungle whose outlines appear distorted by mist. Yet even they admit, reluctantly, almost in a whisper, that the persistence of the stories feels heavier than mere imagination. Why do so many return with the same vision? The same spirals, the same breath of the walls, the same chamber of moonlight. If all were dreams, why do their fragments align so closely, like pieces of a puzzle no hand has ever completed? Perhaps the temple itself chooses its pilgrims. Perhaps it reveals itself only when the world is quiet enough, when the listener's heart slows into rhythm with the hour before dawn. The vanishing. And yet, no matter how vivid, no matter how certain, the temple never survives the morning. As the first strands of sunlight weave across the sky, the vision weakens, the edges blur. Pillars dissolve into vapor, steps fade beneath the weight of dew. What once felt solid softens into mist. Many who have sworn to see it describe the same moment of loss, the breath caught in their chest as the sanctuary dissolves before their eyes, leaving them alone in an ordinary landscape. Trees, mist, damp ground, nothing more. The air feels hollow, as though something sacred has retreated, and in its absence remains only silence, deep and unbroken. It is said this vanishing is not destruction, but return, that the temple belongs to night, and night alone. Daylight cannot hold it, sunlight cannot contain it. The reflection. What then is this temple? Is it a ruin forgotten by history, its stones swallowed by vines and mist? Is it the remnant of a faith that lives only in dreams? Or is it something more elusive, a memory of devotion, a prayer given form, a vision meant only for those who wander between waking and sleep? Perhaps it was never meant to be found. Perhaps its truth lies not in its walls, but in the silence it leaves behind. For what is memory, if not a temple that appears and disappears, rising when the heart is quiet, vanishing when the light of day demands certainty? What is devotion, if not the willingness to believe in what cannot be held? And so, the story lingers. A temple that stands not in geography, but in time. A sanctuary woven from mist, from chants, from whispers that slip away when spoken too loudly. Even now, when you close your eyes, you may see it. Faint outlines in the fog, spirals etched in silver, the breath of stone inhaling with the stars. The temple stretches before you, endless, unbroken. Not stone, not dream, but something in between. And just as sleep begins to gather, the vision softens, dissolves, and slips away. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen, and some sanctuaries exist only in the fragile hours before dawn, the dancers in the rain. It is said that walls remember more than stone should be able to hold, that in the lines carved by forgotten hands, gestures linger, waiting for the right hour to awaken. And upon one ancient wall, smooth now with centuries of touch, of weather, of silence, there remain faint carvings of dancers. They are not whole, not sharp, not unbroken. Their forms are worn, softened by time, by wind, by moss, yet their postures remain. One lifts an arm as if in offering, another bends as though listening to the earth. Another smiles, a smile so delicate it could vanish at the next rainfall, and still they endure poised in an eternal moment, caught between motion and stillness, between breath and silence. The invitation. Imagine the monsoon, the air heavy, swollen with the weight of waiting clouds. A hush falls across the land before the sky opens, and then, all at once, rain pours, silver threads unraveling from the heavens. The temple walls, once dry and pale, drink deeply. Water flows across every groove, every carved hand, every tilted face. And in that shimmer, that trembling dance of droplets upon stone, the dancers seem to move. Their limbs gleam with wetness. Their smiles ripple like the surface of a pool stirred by a passing breeze. It is said the ancients believed the rain awakened them, that each droplet was a note of music, striking stone like a drum, like a bell, like a voice. That in storms, the dancers rose, invisible to human eyes, and their movements flowed into the very soil. Whispers tell us this was no spectacle for man. The dance was not performed for kings or for crowds. It was given to the sky, to the rivers, to the deep roots beneath the earth, a performance eternal and unseen. The deepening mystery. The origins of these carvings have faded into the dust of centuries. No record names their sculptors, no chronicle describes the ceremony for which they were made. Yet scholars, wandering priests, and dreamers alike return to them, unable to resist the mystery etched into their forms. Some suggest they are apsaras, celestial dancers of old belief, messengers between heaven and earth. Their gestures, they say, are mudras, symbolic movements speaking a language beyond words. Others believe they are not gods, but human memories, women of the court, performers once celebrated, frozen into stone so their beauty would never be lost. But there are also whispers, softer, harder to trace, that these figures were carved not to honor the living, but to awaken the land itself. Each hand raised like the rising stalk of grain, each bent knee echoing the rhythm of rain striking soil. That the dance was never meant to be seen, only felt, only heard, in the pulse of monsoon thunder and the murmur of water sliding into earth's dark belly. Symbols in the rain stand before the carvings when the storm begins. Listen. The rain strikes not just the wall, but the grooves, the lines, the spaces, shaped like mouths and eyes. The sound shifts. A resonance forms. The dripping, the trickling, the rivulets sliding downward, they create a rhythm. Some swear it is music, others, voices. Still others claim it is the sound of anklets, small bells hidden in stone, chiming faintly with each drop. The wall becomes not just an image, but an instrument. The storm itself becomes the musician. And in that fleeting hour, art is reborn not as static, not as silent, but as motion and song. It is said, the ancients called this the rain dance of stone, that they built no theater, no audience chamber, no throne for kings. Only walls, waiting for rain, waiting for the sky to lean close enough to hear, between silence and song. But what happens when the rain ceases? The shimmer fades, the grooves dry, the smiles become faint again, their illusion gone. What moments ago seemed alive returns to stillness. Some believe this is the secret, that art is never meant to be constant, that beauty lives only when touched by change. Just as the lotus blooms in water and closes in darkness, so too the dancers awaken only with rain and return to silence when the air grows dry. Perhaps this was the lesson left behind, that eternity is not found in unbroken preservation, but in cycles, that to be hidden is not to be forgotten, but to rest until the right hour calls. And so, the wall is not empty in its stillness. It is waiting, waiting for the clouds to gather again, waiting for the sky to remember its song. Whispers of the ancients, travelers in later centuries wrote of standing before the carvings, drenched in storms, feeling as though the air itself vibrated with unseen presence. Some closed their eyes and swore they could feel a procession moving past them, anklets striking stone, arms sweeping through air, a music that entered not the ears but the bones. Others, skeptical, dismissed it as imagination. The rain makes illusions, they said. The mind fills what it longs to see. And yet, even they could not deny that something stirred when the walls grew wet, something unseen, something almost alive. the fade into silence. And so, we return to the walls once more. The storm passes, the clouds break, a thin sunlight spreads across the land, the carvings dry, growing pale, brittle again, each line losing its shimmer. The dancers freeze once more, returning to their eternal pause. But listen closely. Beneath the silence, there lingers something, a faint memory, a breath, a rhythm that does not vanish entirely, as though the earth itself has stored the music, holding it deep within roots and soil, waiting for the next storm to release it again. Perhaps the dancers never meant to be captured forever. Perhaps they exist only in the meeting of stone and rain, of sound and silence, of moment and memory, art that cannot be owned, beauty that lives only when touched, a gift not for the eye that demands permanence, but for the heart that can accept ephemerality, the reflection. So, imagine this: you stand before the wall in the twilight of a storm. Water streams down its face, catching light, glimmering like silver veins. The carved dancers flicker, shimmer, sway. You close your eyes, and for one instant, you feel them alive. Arms raised, anklets ringing, voices singing, not to you, not to anyone, but to the sky itself. And when you open your eyes, the rain has slowed, the shimmer is fading, the stone is still. The silence returns. Perhaps it was never meant to be found, not the dance itself, not the song, but the truth of its fleetingness. Some voices only echo when the world is quiet enough to listen. Some dances exist only in rain. And even now, as sleep begins to draw near, you may imagine the storm once more, endless, unbroken, falling upon those silent walls, awakening dances no human eye can truly witness, but which the earth and sky will never forget. The stairway that ends in silence. It is said, there are places in the world where stone itself remembers the prayers of those who once climbed upon it, where steps, worn smooth by countless feet, carry not only the weight of bodies, but the weight of longing, of hope, of devotion too deep for words. And in one temple, now quiet, now emptied of voices, there remains a stairway unlike any other. It does not lead to a higher chamber, nor to an open sky. It does not end in doorway or shrine. Instead, it ascends slowly, patiently, step by step, until it meets only a wall. A stairway to nowhere. Or perhaps, a stairway to everywhere unseen. The invitation. Imagine standing at its base in the hush of twilight. The air is heavy with the smell of dust and old stone. A shaft of fading light stretches across the first step, then fades, leaving the rest in shadow. The stairway rises before you, not grand, not sweeping, but narrow, purposeful. The edges of each step are rounded, worn by centuries of feet, the feet of monks, of pilgrims, of priests long vanished into the dust of memory. Each one climbed, though there was nothing above to reach. At the summit waits only stone, a blank wall, smooth, silent, unyielding. And yet, for those who once entered here, this was never an ending. It was a threshold. The deepening mystery whispers tell us the stair was never built to reach a higher place of earth, but a higher place of spirit. That the priests would ascend in ritual, each step a prayer, each breath an offering. When they reached the wall, they did not turn back in disappointment. Instead, they bowed. They closed their eyes. They stepped not forward into stone, but upward into the unseen. The wall was not barrier, it was veil. A veil between what the eye could see and what the soul could know. It is said, the ancients believed that devotion itself was a kind of ascent. That by climbing, by breathing, by focusing on each step, the spirit rose, even if the body remained tethered to earth. The stair was not a passage for the body, but a passage for the invisible within. Symbols, along the ascent. Look closely, and you will see faint carvings etched into the stone along the side of the stair. Spirals, stars, faint lines that echo the rhythm of breath. They are barely visible now, almost dissolved by time, yet their shapes linger, waiting for those who fact will notice. Some say these symbols were maps, not of geography, but of spirit. Spirals guiding the soul outward, stars pointing upward, lines marking the cycles of inhalation and exhalation. Perhaps the stair itself was not only structure, but scripture, a teaching carved in stone, meant to be read not with the eyes but with the feet. Each step becomes a syllable, each breath a verse, each pause at the summit a silence deeper than any word. Echoes of ritual. Close your eyes and imagine the temple centuries ago. Midnight. Candles lit along the stair, their flames trembling in the still air. A line of priests moving upward, their robes brushing the stone, their bare feet pressing each step with care. No one speaks. The only sound is the rhythm of movement, the faint echo of feet, the slow exhalation of breath. At the summit, they stop. The wall looms before them, blank, unmoving. They do not touch it. They do not bow to it. They simply stand, still, as though listening to something beyond. Some believed they were practicing surrender, walking until the body could go no further, and then yielding the rest to spirit. Others believed they were rehearsing the journey of death, climbing, breathing, ascending until they reached the final wall, the final veil, and then stepping into what cannot be seen, between devotion and doubt. And yet, questions linger. Why carve such a stair at all, if it reached nowhere? Why wear the stone thin with endless climbing, if not to arrive at something? Perhaps that is the mystery, that the stair was not meant to grant answers but to dissolve them, a test of patience, a lesson in surrender, a reminder that devotion does not always lead to what the eye expects, for is not life itself much the same? We climb, step after step, chasing visions, chasing doors we believe will open. Yet so often, we reach only walls that seem like endings, yet perhaps conceal something greater, the breath of stone. Some who stood at the summit swore they felt something shift, not in sight, not in sound, but in the air itself, as though the wall breathed, as though the stair pulsed faintly, alive. Others claimed visions that with closed eyes they saw not stone, but stars, that the wall dissolved, revealing endless sky. That in that final silence, the body ceased to matter, and only the rising of spirit remained. Were these truths, or only the echoes of longing? Perhaps both, for longing itself has power. It shapes what we feel, what we hear, what we dream, and in the hush of that temple, longing was carved into every stone. The fade into silence, now the stairway waits in ruin. No priests climb it, no candles burn along its length. Dust has gathered in its grooves. Silence reigns where once there was breath and prayer, and yet it still rises. Each step remains, worn but unbroken. The wall still waits at its summit, blank as ever. To the casual eye, it is a puzzle, a relic, perhaps even a mistake of architecture. But to those who pause, to those who listen, something stirs. The stair feels less like stone and more like an invitation, a call not to climb outward, but inward. Not to reach the world above, but the unseen realm within. Perhaps that is where devotion truly leads, not to palaces of heaven, not to visions of light, but to silence, to surrender, to the place where questions dissolve and only presence remains, the reflection. So, imagine now, at the edge of sleep, that you stand at the stair's base. You place your foot upon the first worn stone. Slowly, you climb. Each step brings a rhythm, soft as heartbeat. Each breath slows. The world behind you fades. You reach the summit. Before you, the wall, blank, silent, unyielding. You close your eyes, and in that moment, you feel yourself lifted, not upward in body, but upward in spirit, carried into realms unseen. Perhaps the stair was never meant to be solved. Perhaps it was always meant to end in mystery. A stair that ascends forever into silence. A stair that asks, quietly, tenderly, where does devotion truly lead? And as sleep begins to close in around you, you may find yourself still climbing step after step, breath after breath, not toward an ending, but toward a silence that has no end at all. The temple of breath. It begins with stillness. A stillness so complete, so unbroken, that even the sound of one's own heartbeat seems too loud to belong. Among the ruins swallowed by roots and vines, half buried beneath centuries of forgetting, there lies a chamber where silence lingers like an ancient presence. Its stones, crumbled yet enduring, hold not the memory of kings, nor the boasting of warriors, but something softer, something infinitely more elusive. When the moon tilts its pale face above the canopy, thin beams pierce the broken roof, and within the chamber they fall as silver shafts, touching dust that has not been disturbed for generations. Each particle drifts slowly, suspended in the dim glow, shimmering like grains of sacred incense released into unseen currents. It is said that this chamber was once alive with a devotion unlike any other, not with chants, not with fire, not with sacrifice, but with the simple rhythm of breath, inhaled, exhaled, carried into the night as though it were a hymn no scribe could write. Whispers tell us it was a temple not to gods who demanded conquest or crowns, but to the quiet pulse that binds all life, the unseen tide that moves through every creature, every leaf, every hidden root beneath the soil. To breathe here was to pray, to exhale was to offer oneself to eternity. The ancients believed that air itself was sacred, that the spaces between words, between heartbeats, between the rise and fall of the chest, contained truths too vast for language. Here, within these walls now draped in vines, monks once sat in silence, waiting for the breath to carry them beyond. They say some waited so long that their bodies became indistinguishable from the stones they leaned upon, their skin weathered into rock, their bones entwined with root and dust. But their spirits, oh, their spirits dissolved into the air around them, leaving the chamber thick with presence, like a lingering exhale. Even now, those who step inside claim they feel watched not by eyes, but by the weight of countless breaths layered upon one another. Each inhale is said to draw the ancient monks closer. Each exhale releases them, scattering their memory into the night. Some pilgrims once journeyed here. They traveled through forests heavy with mist, guided not by maps, but by the rhythm of their own breathing. For the path was never drawn upon parchment. It was charted within the body, a journey measured not by distance, but by the quiet surrender of each inhalation, each sigh. And when they arrived, the pilgrims found no idols, no thrones of stone, no altars gilded with offerings, only emptiness, only stillness, only the drifting of dust through moonlight, like voices unspoken. At first, many could not understand, but as they sat within the chamber, listening to the silence that seemed to hum beneath the surface, they felt themselves slow. Their thoughts softened, their hearts found a rhythm older than any chant, and for some, the breath itself became the revelation. Whispers tell us that in those moments, when the chamber's air grew heavy and alive, one could feel as though the walls themselves were breathing. The ruins inhaled, the ruins exhaled, and the pilgrim, caught in that tide, could no longer tell where their body ended and the temple began. It is said that time here does not pass as it does beyond the roots and the forest. A single breath can stretch into an hour, a single hour into a night into a lifetime. There are stories of wanderers who entered and never returned, not because they were lost, but because they had become part of the silence. Some believe their bodies faded like mist, leaving only the faint echo of their final sigh. Others say the chamber keeps them still, seated upon the stone floors, their faces serene, their lungs filled with eternity. And yet there are those who have returned. They speak not of visions, not of revelations carved in flame or thunder. They speak only of stillness, of feeling more alive within one quiet breath than in all their years of restless searching. If you listen closely, even now, you may hear it, not with your ears, but with the spaces within yourself. The chamber hums, not loudly, not with sound, but with the weight of countless inhalations, countless exhalations, folded together into one endless rhythm. Some call it the sound of the universe. Others call it nothing at all. But beneath the silence, there is something that touches the skin like invisible wind, something that rests upon the chest like an ancient hand. And perhaps, if you sit long enough, you too may feel it, that the act of breathing so simple, so often unnoticed, is the oldest prayer the world has ever known. In forgotten corners of the earth, temples crumble, their names are lost, their gods are silent, but breath remains, always breath remains. This ruin, hidden among roots, reminds us not of power or dominion, but of fragility, of the thin thread that ties us all to existence, every inhale a beginning, every exhale an ending, a cycle older than stone, older than stars. Perhaps that is why the monks stayed, perhaps that is why they dissolved into the air, choosing to become part of the very rhythm they worshipped. Not carved in history, not written in scripture, but breathed into eternity, forever unseen. And so the chamber waits, Its dust continues to drift like incense in moonlight. Its silence continues to hum like the heartbeat of a sleeping world. Those who find it may sit upon the cool stone floor, close their eyes, and feel that they are not alone, that every breath is shared, that every inhale carries voices of the past, and every exhale releases them again into the infinite. And when they rise to leave, they carry with them not relics, not proof, but the quiet knowing that breath itself is the temple, that silence itself is the prayer. Now, as you listen, allow yourself to breathe, slowly, softly, without effort. Inhale, and imagine the dust motes rising in the silver glow. Exhale, and feel the chamber empty, as if it too were breathing with you. The temple drifts into silence, but the prayer does not end. It never ends. Perhaps it was never meant to. For some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. And breath eternal, unseen, is one of them. The shrine beneath the roots. It begins not with grandeur, not with triumph, but with concealment. Far from the open courts of kings, far from the echoing halls of temples raised toward the sky, there lies a place few would expect. Deep beneath the coils of an ancient banyan, in the hidden silence where roots tangle into chambers of their own, rests a shrine almost forgotten. It is not easily seen, it is not easily reached. The earth folds inward here, heavy and watchful, as though guarding a secret. And within that secret, faint upon the worn face of stone, there lingers the image of a figure carved long ago. A figure so eroded by time that it is more shadow than form, more memory than presence. Yet somehow it remains. The moonlight rarely finds its way here. Only on certain nights, when its pale glow slips through the canopy, does the carving gleam faintly, like a ghost waiting in stone. And those who glimpse it speak of a stillness so deep, so profound, that even the air seems to bow in reverence. It is said that offerings are still left there, small flowers pressed between roots, their petals already wilting by dawn, fragments of cloth, faded and frayed, tucked into crevices as though the stone itself might wear them, coins so tarnished, they gleam not with wealth, but with age, yet no hand is ever seen, no pilgrim is caught kneeling there. The gifts appear quietly, as though carried by the earth itself. Some believe the spirits of the tree deliver them the roots. After all, twist and stretch like fingers, as if they too remember how to worship. Others whisper of villagers who come only by night, when the forest is thick with shadows and silence is safest. And a few suggest the offerings are older still, remnants of devotions so ancient that they continue by themselves, long after the worshippers have turned to dust. Imagine kneeling there, beneath the weight of earth and roots. The banyan above, vast and eternal, spreads its canopy to the stars, yet here below, you are enclosed, hidden within the quiet pulse of the soil. The air is heavy with damp, carrying the scent of moss, of earth long undisturbed, of incense burned and vanished centuries ago, but somehow still lingering. Each breath feels hushed, as though inhaling another's prayer, exhaling your own into the waiting roots. The figure before you does not demand recognition. It has no crown, no sword, no clear face. And perhaps that is its secret. In its vagueness, in its worn silence, it becomes a mirror. Those who kneel may see what they carry within a guardian, a spirit, an ancestor, a forgotten god. Or perhaps nothing at all but stone and shadow. Yet even then the devotion remains. Whispers tell us that such shrines were not built for the many, but for the few. Hidden places, carved in secrecy, where devotion was not displayed to the world but offered inward into the silence itself. They were temples not of proclamation, but of intimacy. Some believe monks once came here, long before the banyan's roots swallowed the chamber. They say they would sit in stillness, hour after hour, feeling the weight of the soil above them as both burden and blessing. To sit beneath roots was to sit at the feet of the world itself, to know what it was to be, enclosed and yet connected to the tree, to the sky, to the silent breath of the earth. Others believe the shrine was made by villagers who sought not grandeur, but shelter for their prayers. Too humble to raise temples of stone, they carved their faith into the earth itself, where it could be hidden, where it could survive. And indeed, it has survived not through glory, but through secrecy. Even now, the shrine lives, not in light, but in shadow, not in proclamation, but in whispers. If you close your eyes, you might hear it. The faint drip of water through roots, the slow breathing of the earth around you, the murmur of leaves above carried into the soil below. Each sound feels like part of a liturgy, older than any scroll. A liturgy written not in words, but in silence. Perhaps that is why the figure endures. Not because it resists time, but because it invites time to join it. The stone does not fight the erosion. It softens, it fades, until it is almost gone. And in that fading, it becomes something more powerful than permanence. It becomes memory. There are stories of those who sought the shrine and felt their heartbeat shift as they entered. They describe it as though the roots themselves pressed upon their chest, slowing the rhythm, drawing them inward. To kneel there, they said, was to feel one's pulse echo not within the body, but within the earth. As though the shrine were not an object, but a living heart, hidden and still beating beneath the centuries. And when they rose again, they carried that rhythm with them. A quiet reminder, tucked into their breath, that devotion need not be vast or loud. That sometimes the truest offering is the smallest one, left unseen, carried into silence. The banyan grows on. Its roots deepen, its canopy stretches wider. Birds come and go, nesting and departing, unaware of the shadow carved below. Seasons pass. Monsoons drench the soil, and the chamber fills with the scent of rain, the walls darkened by water. Then comes the heat of summer, the earth dry, the roots clutching tighter, holding fast to the shrine, and still the figure remains, more shadow now than shape, more absence than presence. Yet offerings appear, as though devotion itself refuses to vanish. Perhaps it was never meant to be seen by the world. Perhaps it was never meant to be found by those who search. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. And this shrine, hidden beneath roots, speaks not with sound, but with silence. So let it remain. Let it rest beneath the coils of the banyan, cloaked in secrecy, pulsing like a heart beneath layers of earth. Let the flowers wilt unseen. Let the coins tarnish and vanish into soil. Let the incense fade into memory. For the shrine does not need to be known to endure. It does not need to be named to be alive. Its life is quiet, secret, small, and yet it continues like a heartbeat beneath time. And now, as you breathe, imagine yourself there, the roots enclosing you, the earth pressing above, the figure, shadowed and silent, before you. Inhale and feel the damp air, heavy with devotion. Exhale and let the silence receive it, as if it were an offering. The shrine fades into shadow once more. The chamber closes into stillness, but the heartbeat remains, faint, eternal, hidden beneath roots and time. Perhaps it was never meant to be found. Perhaps it was always meant to be felt. The empty throne of Angkor, it begins with moonlight. A pale, silver river of light spills gently across the stones, bathing what remains of a court that once thundered with ceremony. The ruins of Angkor breathe under this glow, ancient walls softened by time, towers crowned with moss, the air perfumed with night blossoms and the slow song of cicadas. And there, at the very edge of the ruined court, stands a single stone seat, not grand in height, not gilded with jewels, but carved, worn, and enduring. The throne, as some call it. Its surface glimmers faintly, as if the moon itself has chosen to sit upon it. Shadows stretch across the courtyard like long, patient courtiers, their presence silent yet commanding, bowing to an absent sovereign. The air gathers in hushed stillness, as though the night remembers what the day has long forgotten. It is said that this throne was left deliberately vacant, not abandoned, not broken, but placed here for a reason, as though waiting for one who never arrived. The vessel of silence whispers tell us that this stone seat was not made for mortal rulers. It was never touched by crowns of gold or robes of silk. Instead, it was meant for something greater, a god who did not descend, a king who never returned, or perhaps a spirit that could not be bound by flesh. In the nights of long ago, offerings were set before it, bowls of rice, fragrant flowers, sacred oils. Some believe the throne was a vessel, not for a body, but for presence itself. The people would kneel, heads lowered, before an emptiness that felt heavier than any figure of flesh. It is said that vows were sworn before this silent seat, not to kings, nor to earthly law, but to silence itself, the unbroken witness, the eternal listener. To kneel before it was to face the invisible. To speak into its stillness was to test the weight of one's own heart. The court of shadows, imagine it, if you will. A vast stone court under the rising moon, the night warm and fragrant. Torches burning in quiet rows, their flames bending to the soft winds of Cambodia. The courtiers stand like shadows, their forms trembling in firelight, their robes brushing against the dust. Before them, the throne, empty, silent, waiting. A priest steps forward. He places incense at the foot of the stone. The smoke curls upward, spiraling toward stars that blink faintly above the jungle canopy. The priest bows, not to a man, but to absence, to possibility, to the great unknown. The silence stretches. Even the insects hush. In that stillness, the throne is no longer stone. It is a mouth that does not speak. It is an eye that does not close. It is a vessel that gathers everything and releases nothing. Some whispered that to gaze too long upon the throne was to feel one's own reflection return, heavier, stranger, older than before. Whispers in stone legends drift through time like smoke. One story tells of a king who vanished into the jungle, never to return. His throne, left behind, was kept vacant in hope of his arrival, not for a season, not for a lifetime, but for eternity. Another speaks of gods who once walked upon the earth, but who departed in silence. Their seat remains, a reminder of their absence or perhaps their return. Still others believe the throne belongs to no one at all, that it is a doorway, carved in stone, for the night itself to enter. A place where darkness sits, dignified and unchallenged, ruling in stillness as stars crown the heavens above. The throne listens, they say. It hears every vow, every prayer, every secret whispered beneath its gaze, and though it never replies, it carries those words deep into the stone, where silence keeps them safe. The weight of waiting. If you sit before it even now, as the centuries have drifted and jungles have reclaimed their crowns, you will feel its weighting. The stone is cool, the air presses close. Time seems to dissolve around you, leaving only the steady breathing of the earth. The throne does not call, nor does it command, yet it does not release you easily. Some travelers speak of sitting before it and sensing a vastness opening within, a reminder of kings long forgotten, of gods unnamed, of ancestors whose footsteps no longer stir the dust. Others claim that in the throne's silence, their own silence deepened, as though the stone was teaching them the language of stillness. It is not a throne of power, not as we imagine it. It is a throne of longing. It does not hold a ruler, but the idea of return, the memory of something lost, the eternal night. And so the throne remains, marked not by crowns or banners, but by moonlight. It waits as the jungle creeps closer, as vines, coil and roots press against stone, as centuries fold like paper into the past. It waits through storms, through seasons of fire and flood, through the passing of empires. Perhaps it waits not for a king, nor for a god, nor even for a pilgrim. Perhaps it waits for the night itself, for the moment when darkness, eternal and unbroken, descends fully to claim its seat. When you close your eyes and let the silence gather, you may hear it, the slow, patient breath of the throne, the endless waiting, the weight of absence, the dignity of stillness, and you may wonder, as so many before you have wondered, whether the throne is waiting for you, not to sit upon it, but simply to listen, to bow your head before silence and let it crown you with its unspoken grace. In the end, the throne is neither empty nor full, it is simply there, stone turned into vessel, silence turned into presence, waiting turned into eternity. Perhaps it was never meant to be filled. Perhaps it was always meant to remain open, a reminder that not all thrones demand rulers, and not all mysteries demand answers. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen, and beneath the silver of the moon, the throne of Angkor still waits not for kings, not for gods, but for the night itself to sit upon it, eternal and unbroken.